The opinions expressed on the radio program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
It's another Thoughtful Thursday, and you're on air with Ron. And guess Romane is back.
Hi.
My co-host with the most is back. Haven't seen her in a while, but we're glad to have her back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Good.
Been lifing, so.
Well, you know what? That's understandable. Life happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you need to step away to do those things that are most important. And family always comes first.
Mm-hmm.
So that, we understand. But today, you know what? You haven't been here since the election. So there's a lot of craziness that's going on since this man took office.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the craziest, and Terry and I were talking about this off air, is this roundup of people that are suspected of being illegal migrants. And I think Trump said it was going to be the largest roundup ever.
Mm.
I don't know how you can beat what happened in Nazi Germany, but I guess in some way he's going to try, right? I mean, literally millions of people were rounded up from, a number of countries in Europe and sent to other, concentration camps, labor camps, or death camps, in Europe. So I don't know how he plans to, round up more people than that, but something in him tells him, or something within him says he can do better. I don't know how. But he's got these ICE agents, and they're out basically approaching people, kicking open doors, going to people's homes. And the question is it legal for them to do that?
First of all, I think some of it is not legal. Second, they're even attempting to go into schools. And
Mhm.
I know a lot of people in that field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in their mind, the quickest way or easiest way to get the parents is to take the children into custody, right?
Mhm.
And then, of course, you're going to come for your kids,
Right.
right? So they've been trying to get into schools, and the schools have been locking the door and refusing to let them in
Mm-hmm.
and calling, well, in our state, children of youth.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of it is not just not legal, but unethical too.
It's downright heartless,
Mhm.
right? You have little children, and I do security in schools, and most of the time I'm at an intermediate school, and nobody, it's from the fourth through the sixth grade. So we're talking kids as young as 8, 9, up until maybe 10, 11, 12 tops.
Mhm.
So these children, what do they know about immigration status? What do they know about? Some of them, were born here. Some came here as infants. What do they know about migration or how their parents entered the country? But it is heartless for this to happen. And there is a long legacy in this country of black and brown children being rounded up, taken from their parents, their homes, from everything they know. And now you're taking people and you're sending them to countries, not even their country of origin. What they're doing now is they've opened up a holding facility in Guantanamo in Cuba.
Mhm.
So now if you're Mexican, if you're from Nicaragua, if you're from Honduras, if you're from any place in Central South America other than Cuba, how do you wind up in Cuba?
Mhm.
So if these people have entered the country, quote unquote, illegally, which by the way is not a crime. Technically, when you enter the country without authorization or without documents, it is a civil offense.
Mhm.
You should not be criminally charged because it's not a crime, it's a civil offense.
Mhm.
So basically, what's supposed to happen is if you come in contact with ICE, Customs, and Immigration, and some federal agent, they're supposed to place a detainer on you and have you go to court, to an immigration court, appear before a judge at a specific date and time. They're not supposed to just take you, lock you up, and essentially throw away the key until you see a judge. But that's what this new administration is doing.
But that's what America wanted that. So much of America
Mhm.
wanted that. So many people voted for him
Mm-hmm.
because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't just blame it all on his administration.
Mhm.
It's the administration that Americans put into office, right?
Uh-huh.
And they voted for him. The vote was, was multifaceted why people voted,
Mhm.
but that was on the list.
Right.
Immigration, women's right to choose, which he
Mhm.
thought was wrong.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that drove the vote was hate. So a lot of people, it was just, we're going to vote for him over the black female.
Right.
And so now we are seeing the repercussions of who and what we are as a country. So,
Well, I think that a lot of people now, those who supported him, those who are some of his staunchest supporters, are now having voters remorse.
Mhm.
Not only do we have this mass roundup, we also have mass firings. And some of these people, before you get your pink slip or you're told not to show up to work, nobody asked, are you Republican or are you Democrat?
Mhm.
Nobody asked, how did you vote in the last election? It really doesn't matter to Trump or to Elon Musk. And here's something I read in the Times the other day. The Republicans are putting forth a budget. I think it's a $4.5 trillion budget, I guess for fiscal year 2026. Well, if you go back to Trump's, right after he was inaugurated, he said he's going to get to work right away on some of his top priorities. And one of them was to raise the debt ceiling. He wanted to raise the debt ceiling because he wanted to give a huge tax cut to the wealthiest.
Mhm.
Okay. They did not, the Republican controlled Congress did not give him what he wanted. This $4.5 trillion budget is not enough to give out this windfall to the top earners in this country, top corporations. So now all of a sudden, he's looking for waste. I know where he could find a lot of it. But he says he's looking for waste. And they have these measures in place to cut costs. My thought is, what is he going to do with the surplus? I'm almost certain that that money is going to go toward the tax cut. Because what else is he going to do with it? He's had these people, these billionaires and these corporations like Elon Musk that invested hundreds of millions of dollars into his campaign. And they want a return on that. So what if Musk is kind of like the fiscal watchdog that was sent there by the 1% to make sure that he does these cuts, so that I don't care if you throw people out of work, just make sure our taxes are cut. Just make sure you extend the tax cut from your prior administration and cut even deeper. And some of these cuts are really hurting the poorest in this country.
But again, this is what we voted for. And the scariest part is when you look at the stats, it was the black male vote that won that election for him. So we're saying, what about this and what about that? What about the black men who chose to not vote for a black female, but instead to entrust their future and their children's future to the hands of somebody like Donald Trump and his crazy, because some of what he is looking to do is crazy, and some of what his vision entails is insane and narcissistic.
Well,
So
well, here's the thing. You said this is what we voted for. Is it really? Do you think that for the average black male voter, do you think that they had any idea that when Trump got into office, that he would have such drastic cuts to jobs, to programs that many in the inner city and some in rural areas depend on for their very survival?
I know some educated black men who we debated about this
Mhm.
before the election, right? And for whatever reason, they felt confident that he was going to turn the economy around. They felt confident that it would be him that would stop abortions and is abortion um, a means to make sure that we don't outnumber them? I believe that too. I believe that
Mhm.
because guess what? Soon we will. We're already there, right? So
Mhm.
we will. We're and then when you talk about interracial relationships, right? That's another factor. So they don't really want us to have children. They
Mhm.
don't. So I get that part. But it's the African American educated man, right, who said, I'm voting for him for these reasons. So if it was people that really didn't read and didn't know, then I would say, okay, they didn't know what they were doing.
Mhm.
Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do.
Mhm.
But we can't say that with this. This was like a lot of educated black men that they were adamant
Mhm.
that he would do a better job.
Well, a better job in terms of what, right? I mean, a lot of people have said the last 4 years was a disaster, or was it? Was it? I don't know. Was it any worse than what we had in the '80s under Reagan?
No, it was no worse, but they were going to point out the worst because of who was in office.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did. They pointed out the worst. And don't get me wrong, I was not convinced. At no point did Kamala have me convinced, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she got my vote by default,
Right.
right? Because he wasn't going to get my vote,
Right.
and as an African American woman, I wasn't going to waste my vote,
Right.
right? So she got my vote by default, and I said that to a lot of people. They didn't understand, like, what? What do you mean by default? But it really was because I wasn't convinced.
Mm-hmm.
But not only did she not convince me, he convinced me
Mm-hmm.
that he was not supposed to be there.
Right.
He has a track record, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people thought that a lot of that was a facade, that he was going to come in. I had people say to me, oh, he's not a racist. He's not. Like, what? Where were you when he was in office? Like, what did he evoke when he was in office the last time? So here we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that to say, here we are, Ron. Here we are. And based on the decisions that, I'm sorry, I have to point to black men because once again, they're supposed to be leading, covering, and protecting, and they helped to assure that he got into that position.
Mm-hmm.
And that's alarming. So forget everything he's doing. That's alarming. What's alarming is that we still getting hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led astray in 2024.
We
We
are.
still doing that?
We are.
Yeah, it's sad.
Well, I think that a lot of people were hoodwinked and bamboozled with this last election. Because, as I said, a number of Trump supporters are now out on the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've lost their jobs. And I mean, we're talking about people, from a broad cross section of life, right? Some professionals, some mid level managers, and just rank and file workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these people are veterans who went and fought, multiple times in Iraq and Afghanistan and came home, were lucky enough to get a job, and now that job has been terminated. And no good reason, just that you're looking for waste. Well, there's so much waste in Washington, right? Why do you need to throw these workers off of the payroll when there's so many other ways to trim the fat? But I honestly believe that this money that he's going to get from the various agencies is going to go into the pocket of the wealthiest people in this country. We are not going to have a budget surplus. Right now, we are $36 trillion, $36 trillion of debt that we've accumulated over the years. What he is going to collect from these agencies won't even put a dent into that.
Mm-mm.
And he knows that this is a number that is basically beyond repair, right? We're never going to be able to, I guess, fill that hole, that gaping hole. So, in his mind, all he could do is, I guess, do the wishes or the bidding of those people that put him in office.
Mhm.
And when I talk about those people that put him in office, I'm not talking about the average working class American. I'm talking about the corporations. I'm talking
Mhm.
about Elon Musk.
Mhm.
And here's somebody who is showing up at government agencies demanding access into the building.
Insanity.
Right. Now, how is that allowed to happen? And yet, there are some people in this country that are still saying, well, I don't see a problem with that. But what about your right to privacy? Why does this man, who's not a government official, why does this man need to know how much Social Security you're collecting?
Mhm.
Why does he need to know what doctor you're seeing or what medication you're on?
That's
What is
right.
he going to do with that information?
Mhm.
You know, but just to go back to the Homeland Security and these roundups, like like I said, Terry and I were talking. These folks are supposed to randomly approach you and ask if you have identification, or you can prove citizenship.
Mhm.
Well, the first thing is, as an American citizen, you do not have to talk to them. Fifth Amendment spells it out. You do not have to have a conversation with the police, ICE, FBI, anybody. You could just say, I have nothing to say, and continue to walk. Now they're asking about proving your citizenship. Well, I'm not going to show you any identification because I'm not required to. If I'm in a public place, I didn't have to show ID to enter. I don't need to show ID to leave. I'm not
Mhm.
showing you identification because now you're violating my Fourth Amendment right. You're illegally seizing me without probable cause. I'm not under arrest, not even reasonable suspicion. So there's no reason for you to approach me and demand identification. Given the fact that as an ICE agent, how the hell do I know you're a citizen?
Mhm.
I haven't seen your identification to prove who you are. So I'm not talking to you. But I think what happens is a lot of people in this country, particularly those who may have some immigration issues, like undocumented,
Mhm.
these people are terrified.
Mhm.
And I saw where there's a couple of restaurants up in Manhattan where their numbers have drastically been reduced because somebody posted something on social media about an ICE raid. So a lot of people are just so terrified they're avoiding places that they would normally congregate
Mhm.
because they know that they're being watched and that these folks will eventually come to these areas where they congregate and start asking questions. But as American citizens, if you think about it, if you look at the people who are being deported, how many Caucasian people have been deported? You're saying that every Caucasian in this country is properly documented?
Hmm. Hmm.
How do we know that?
We don't.
Exactly. And they don't know it either, and they're not even bothering to ask. They're looking for black, brown, and those people who appear to be Hispanic,
Mhm.
right? And this is supposed to be random. Well, how could it be random if you're only talking to the same people?
Hmm. We're in trouble.
Well, you see what
The
happened to me
country
today.
is in trouble. The whole country is in trouble. And again, every time I think about it, I go back to them trying to get in and get access to children.
Hmm. You know, it's worse than that. I don't know if you know this or not, but in some states, they're monitoring women's pregnancies. Not only their pregnancies, their menstrual cycles.
Oh
How
my
you do
God.
that?
They want to know if you are pregnant. They want to know if you're getting prenatal care. They want to know if you're attempting to leave your state to go to another state to have an abortion.
Abortion.
In fact, there's a story from Ohio where a young black woman,
Mm.
pregnant, she was having some, I guess, some minor complications, went to the hospital. They sent her home. She went back to the hospital. Again, same complaint. Again, they sent her home. At home, in the interim, she lost the baby. She went back to the hospital to explain what happened. One of the nurses called the police. The police came, interviewed her. Now, how do you interview somebody who's under a doctor's care, who's being actively treated? You're not supposed to. But the officer did, based on what the nurse told him. They arrested that woman. She fought that case to finally, when it got to before it went to trial, the charges were dropped.
Mm.
But this is a woman that went through hell. She lost her child and then was going to lose her freedom. And she went to the doctor. She did what she was supposed to do to protect her fetus. And they wanted to put this woman in jail. So when you talk about we're in trouble, this country, the world is in trouble.
Mhm.
Because if you think about it, Trump said on day one, I'm going to end this war between Ukraine and Russia. Well, did you see what he's saying now?
Mm.
He is having peace talks,
Oh yeah.
but he didn't invite the Ukrainian president.
This is Donald Trump. Everybody's always so surprised at the craziness that he does.
Right.
Nothing surprises me with him.
But how do you have peace talks if you don't have both parties there to agree to the ceasefire?
Because he's a narcissist. He is crazy.
Mhm.
Nothing makes sense. Think about it.
Mhm.
Nothing that he has done from the day of the inauguration to date makes sense. Everything is crazy, erratic, irrational, just craziness.
Mhm.
You could actually sit and just pinpoint all the behaviors that are narcissistic.
Mhm.
And we keep waiting to think that something's going to change, that he's going to do such a great job. I'm afraid
Mhm.
of what's coming next.
I'm not actually, right? Um, I know people say that Donald Trump is an extreme narcissist, right?
Hmm.
And that he has maybe some antisocial behaviors. I think that what Donald Trump is goes a lot deeper than a psychological problem. I think it goes a lot deeper than narcissism. I think that Donald Trump represents what the Bible referred to as the man of sin,
Mm.
right? I think Donald Trump represents the living embodiment of the devil
Mm.
because, my reading of the scripture says that the devil creates chaos.
Hmm.
And Donald Trump is creating chaos in this country. He's placed the Europeans in chaos because not only did he not invite the Ukraine president to these meetings, none of the European leaders of the European countries that are part of NATO,
Hmm.
none of them are being invited. So now they're having meetings in Europe to try to figure out what do we do now? Because if Donald Trump is going to pull out of the obligation to NATO to protect Europe, which I don't care if he does,
Hmm.
but that leaves the Europeans scrambling. What happens now if this NATO alliance breaks down and Putin decides, oh, I want more than just Ukraine or the section of Ukraine that I have now? What if I want a part of Poland? Who's going to stop me? Donald Trump's my friend.
Hmm.
And basically, he has agreed to meet with Putin not with Zelensky,
Well, that's his
Putin.
friend. Like you said, that's his friend.
his buddy.
hmm
But is that good for? Is it good for European stability, global stability?
No. And I'm going to tell you something.
Mhm.
It's definitely going to raise an eyebrow with how everybody deals with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. That's
Mhm.
why I'm telling you, I'm afraid of what's to come. Of course, I trust that I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be afraid because maybe in us being afraid, we'll start to position ourselves right for some change because it has to be. We need to number one identify somebody for the next election
Mm-hmm.
because the time will go by really fast. 4 years will go by
Let's
fast.
hope.
It will. 4 years will go by fast.
But
But what good will it be if we don't have anybody? If we have somebody else that's not convincing?
not only that, you know, Trump has hinted about staying beyond this next election, right?
Well, Trump tried to not give up the seat.
Exactly.
So,
Right. Exactly. So right now, Trump is in a unique position. His party controls both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court, right? So if Trump, and I guess he can wait because he's in no rush, if Trump were to say that he wants to change the Constitution as it relates to term limits, who's going to stop him? Who has stopped anything he has done? Now, we do have some judges that have put a halt on some of these firings and stuff like that. So there is some pushback. But for the most part, the Republican Party has gone along with everything Donald Trump has said. So if he were to say, you know, we want to change this whole term limit thing, well, who's going to stop him? So
again, it's scary.
Wait, you know what?
I'm not speechless often.
Mhm.
I'm like speechless when you ask me something like that. I don't even know how to answer that because we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know.
Right. We have no idea, you know, because Congress is supposed to be co-equal branches of government, but Congress is supposed to have most of the power. The bulk of the power is supposed to be with them. Yet they're allowing Donald Trump to sort of pick and choose which sections of the Constitution he wants to adhere to and which sections he just wants to ignore, right? And if they're going to keep doing that, right, I think that if you open the door a crack to the devil's going to force his way into your house. And before you know it, you know, husband and wife are going to be fighting. Children are going to be fighting with their parents, right? This is what the devil does. Go here and there and to and fro seeking whom he may devour, right? And that's what is happening. And I think that a lot of people, again, his supporters, are being devoured. You know, some of these folks, they rely on Social Security. Do they want Elon Musk in their business? A lot of these folks, like you're collecting for your food drive, which you should tell us about.
Well, it's over this weekend, so we really don't have a lot of time left. I actually sent out an email today to see if we could extend it until next week. But we are collecting cans for people who have food insecurity, and most of the families that we will reach out to are not here, but they're in Harlem. And so, because that's my home, I've been reaching back a lot lately and helping in Harlem. And so, we are just really focused on trying to provide canned food for some of the food pantries that are actually struggling. So if you have families that have food insecurities and they can't get food from the pantries, we're in a bad place. And so it's been our primary focus to try to see if we could help some of the food pantries in New York, in Harlem specifically. We're doing good with the drive too. I've been personally riding around in the midst of everything else I have to do, but I've been riding around picking up food. So if someone did want to donate cans, I'm sure Terry wouldn't mind if they called the station, right, Terry?
Not at all.
and they could drop them here at Genesis Radio, and the cans will get to New York. One can makes a difference, so one can adds up.
Right.
So, of course, I don't want to put a ceiling on it, but I don't want to say a minimum either.
Right.
But it's needed.
So food insecurity is I guess, a very serious problem in and around Harlem.
Food insecurity is a problem everywhere.
Right.
We think that it's not, and just like everybody thinks that the Poconos is different. The Poconos is scarce as well, but we have people up here that are doing things as well. We just did a coat drive. We did hats and gloves. I myself did the school supplies. So we have people here as well that are struggling economically.
All over the country.
Absolutely. But right now in Harlem, the pantries are struggling. And
so the pantries aren't getting donations.
The pantries aren't getting what they used to get. Are we surprised right now?
Well, you know what? Typically, the local supermarkets and merchants will donate because it's a tax write-off for them, right? But I guess now it's a different climate, right? I think this is something that and I'm talking about, Black people, brown people, poor people, should have known was coming, because this is something that we have been warned about repeatedly. I was watching something the other day and they were talking about Marcus Garvey. When he came here and started the United Negro Improvement Association, he said, basically what we need to do is we need to have our own so we can take care of our own. If you look at the Black Wall Street, we needed our own. We established our own thriving businesses, right? Thriving communities. Well, at some point, we got away from that. Instead of being people who were innovators and people who were builders, we became people who were totally dependent on someone else. And now that cycle of dependency, this is not an amicable divorce, right? People are being thrown out to the wolves, right? And these people did not prepare for this.
No.
Thinking that the good times are going to continue to roll. I remember growing up and working for EMS, generations of family on public assistance, right? Grandma, mom, and now the daughter on public assistance. Well, eventually somebody was going to say, we can cut that. We can cut that subsidy. And it's just amazing to me. Like, you go to New York a lot, right? I haven't been in New York because I'm protesting this whole $9 from this congestion
It
price.
just ended.
Trump ended it, right?
Yeah, so today.
But is that going to hold? Because New York is going to fight.
Well, it needs to hold because most of New York doesn't want it, right? And every time I go into the city, I get pissed all over again,
right?
because
you got to shell out
and
the tunnel, the bridge, and then that.
Yes,
right.
It's either that or you have to learn. Like my goddaughter, I took her to dinner last weekend, and I was taking her home. She lives down by Lincoln Center, right? And so I said, "Listen, I'm not paying the toll to take you home. You might have to get off.
If you're going to FDR Drive, there's no toll."
No, but she said, "God, mommy, I'm going to show you." Right? She's going to show the Pocanonian.
Right.
So she said, "I'm going to show you." And it was like navigating through a cornfield maze. But she took me like, "Oh, make a left up here. Oh, make a right up there. Okay, go 2 blocks and then go right there. See that green line, that green thing?
Right.
Don't go that way."
Right.
Go. I said, "This is craziness. It is craziness."
Right.
And when I go into the city, I usually go Holland Tunnel, Hugh Carey Tunnel, and then into Brooklyn. But then when I come back, so you get that congestion toll when you come out the tunnel. And then when I'm coming back in the morning, I'm getting the congestion toll again. So it
adds up.
Yeah. So now I'm actually thinking about coming in through my stomping ground and coming in through Harlem and then just taking the FDR down. Because like you said,
there's
don't
no
get
toll
it
on that. Right.
But as soon as you get off of any highway or any bridge or come through any tunnel, you get hit with the toll.
Mhm.
And then if you go into certain areas in Manhattan, like my goddaughter was showing me, they have these green, they look almost like a railroad
Mhm.
thing, but they're standing up poles that light up. Those are the zones.
The
So the congestion zones.
okay, okay.
So they have it zoned out.
Mhm.
It's not all of Manhattan. It's like from
They said
where.
below 60th Street.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I know that this whole congestion pricing came about because they said there was a shortfall in MTA's budget,
Oh, okay.
which I didn't think was legal. So you don't live in New York.
No.
You live here.
I live here.
So why
I
should
live
you
here. I work here.
right? So why
Mhm.
should you pay a tax to go into the city, which is not going to benefit the entire city, but a government agency?
Mm-hmm.
And they also raised the fare.
Mm-hmm.
So you raise the subway fare, and now you're trying to collect money, $9 per car. Like the MTA is not allowed to collect taxes.
But now the flip side
Mm-hmm.
to this toll is there's no traffic.
I did see that.
Like it's crazy. Like
Right.
you come in, you get to the Holland Tunnel, it's like no traffic
Right.
at all. So
But here's the problem. All those businesses below
I said
60th
that.
Street,
Mhm.
right? They're not getting the traffic anymore.
Mm-hmm. They're struggling.
They are struggling, and a lot of them are not going to survive this if it holds. If the congestion pricing, if Trump really got rid of it, then they have a chance. But if New York, and I suspect they're going to fight like hell because they need to close this loophole.
Well, the restaurants are struggling. How about this? I just saw this a couple of days ago. All of the rental properties that are in that zone,
Mm-hmm.
all the rents dropped.
Really?
You know why? Who's renting and they have to do that every day?
Right, right. But
That
they ain't
means
dropping out.
every day to come in and out of my house, I have to pay this congestion toll. That's
Mhm.
craziness. So
But-
no, they dropped like significantly. When was
But-
the last time you seen a 2-bedroom apartment in New York in Midtown for $1,300 or $1,400? That's crazy.
Well, that won't last long.
No, well, now it's probably over
Right.
today.
Right. That's an introductory offer.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
But it's over today because I don't know whether to celebrate that it's over or cry because I'm anticipating traffic the next time I go into
Well,
the
I'll
city.
tell you, be cautiously optimistic, right? Because New York, I don't think they're just going to wave goodbye to potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And speaking of New York, what's going on with Eric Adams?
Don't ask me about him. I hear so many.
I know he's
people-
one of your favorites.
Huh? He well, of course, like you said, I'm not a New Yorker, but I hear horror stories.
Right.
Right. And again, I'm in New York all the time. I'm in a relationship with a New Yorker.
Right.
So word on the street and in his house
Right.
is we don't like him.
Right.
Now, I mean, outside of what I see, in
Right.
the news, but people who live in New York have very strong opinions
Mhm.
about what he's done. And believe it or not, the black and brown people can't even believe that he got off this last thing. They can't believe it.
But is he off? Because now there was a judge who called him to court the other day, along with the prosecutors, to try to understand what is the basis for dropping these charges.
Mm.
I mean, if there's lack of evidence, okay. If you don't have witnesses, okay. But if you got a phone call from the U.S. Attorney's Office to tell you to drop the charges because he's assisting with the roundup of migrants, that's not legal justification for dropping the charges. So Eric may not be out of the woods just yet.
Well, I know a lot of people in the city, they'll be happy.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be.
Mm-hmm. They'll be
And-
happy.
I saw that.
I think they were done when he asked them if they could cool out with flushing the toilet. They could cut back on
Right.
flushing the toilet and taking showers. And I think I saw something on TikTok where one girl was like, "We're already paying $3,000 for a studio.
Right.
Now you're gonna tell me I can't take a
Don't
shower
flush the
either
toilet?
and don't flush the toilet?
Why couldn't you flush your toilet? and
Something
take a
with the
shower?
water. I
That's
guess,
ridiculous.
Yeah. So New Yorkers are not pleased with him.
Well, I saw the other day that former Governor Cuomo is thinking about running to be
Oh.
mayor of New York. And I think the sister who is the borough president of Manhattan, they're trying to get her to get into the race because I think they want to keep Cuomo out.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're kind of, urging her, hey, you need to get into this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that actually I saw some polling and they listed a number of potential candidates and how they would rank in turn if the election were held right away.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric Adams was dead last. Now, of course, he's the current mayor, right? So that gives him time and opportunity to make up some ground. Right?
They can't stand him in New York.
I get it, but people are fickle, right? If he starts, say, giving people some jobs, right? And you have to think about it. In Trump's first win against Hillary Clinton, there were a lot of black men, some of my family members, some of my friends who voted for Trump. And they did it for one reason. He talked about jobs. All right. So now if you take Eric Adams, he starts talking about jobs. And, New York always has plenty of construction going on.
Mm-hmm.
You start giving some of these young brothers construction jobs in the construction trades. There are so many businesses that are constantly open up in the city. Some of these people get jobs, good paying jobs. They remember who gave them that opportunity.
I wouldn't believe it if he said it. Nothing that he has done has been for working class people. Mm-hmm. Even this congestion toll that he was so much for, right? He was gung ho. Nobody thought about working class people. The people who live in those areas in the 60s, they can afford to pay.
Absolutely,
they can afford to pay that toll.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the working class people who live above 60th Street, who drive in downtown to go to work? Or what about the working class people who drive into New York to go to work? You didn't hear about that.
Well, that was a question. Realistically, nobody cares about poor working class people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was thinking was, let's say you live in New Jersey and you do deliveries into the congestion zone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw that you only have to pay once, right? But let's say I come in from New Jersey, I do a delivery on 55th Street. I paid the $9.
Mm-hmm.
But now I go back to Jersey because now I need to load up my truck again. And now I'm coming back into New York.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then?
Well, I think you don't have to pay the congestion again because that's once a day.
Right.
But you have to pay the tunnel again.
Oh, you have to pay the tunnel.
But the congestion is good for the day.
Okay, so just once a day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not good.
No.
It's bad enough, but at least it's only once a day.
I was very excited when I saw that today that they stopped it.
Mm.
Ask me again when I go into the city though, and the traffic is back.
Right.
Because literally there's been no traffic since it started. So that was refreshing. You have to almost ask yourself, is the $9 worth the extra hour that you might sit at the tunnel trying to get into the city? Straight in. No problem.
Well, I think that is a clear indication that people cannot afford it.
They can't.
For people who are just getting by, right? Minimum wage jobs and who are living, 11, 12 to a house, right? Just for survival, right? Well, they can't afford to pay this $9.
No.
We think of it like, oh, it's just $9, but sometimes $9 could provide some of those cans to the folks who are in need, right? And $9 could be the difference between having food on the table and your kids going to bed hungry, and this is the wealthiest country, they tell us, on the planet. And yet so many people in this country are struggling financially, and the sad part is we're gauging our financial health based on what Wall Street's doing. most of us don't have a lot of money invested in Wall Street.
That's right.
We need to base it on what's happening on our street,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our communities. They talk about Wall Street and posting records. I ain't getting no records. Are you?
Mm-mm.
No record profits coming my way,
Mm-mm.
right? So I just think that it's important that we need to refocus. And I think that right now, what's happening is a lot of people are going to have to take a hard look at themselves and this country and re-examine things, right? Because a lot of people that you said they voted for Trump, a lot of people, yeah, they voted for Trump, but I don't think they expected to feel the pain. I think they expected black and brown and these so-called illegal migrants, right? They're the ones who are going to be made to suffer, not us, because we're not, they ain't like us.
I was trying to figure this out and nobody could tell me. So people with green cards can vote. Is that what it is?
If you are a resident, yes.
Because I saw,
And you can become like a police officer.
right, because I saw something online where they're deporting them. And so a woman, they were interviewing her and she was crying hysterically because I guess a close family member got deported and she's got picked up. And she said, we voted for him
Mhm.
because he said he wasn't touching us,
Mhm.
like he wasn't going to touch us. And they came right for us.
What do they say in church? The devil is a what?
A liar.
Okay.
Yes.
So I saw something on Instagram the other day. There is a farmer, one of these southern states, red state, I think it's
Mhm.
Alabama, and Trump drastically cut subsidies to farmers. He is in jeopardy of losing his farm. Now he's on Instagram saying, you know what? I'm now listening to people I've never listened to before. I wouldn't be listening to them except for the fact that it affects me, right?
And isn't that weird? That just goes to show you that he's just completely irrational because usually the farmers they have a lot of political pull.
Mm-hmm.
That's just always been the case. Like they wanted to maintain the farmers' vote. I don't know if you remember when we had the event on Main Street, there was even some conflict about scheduling with the farmers market.
Yeah.
And they were scared to tell them that they were not supposed to be there that day. That that somebody else had actually gotten a permit. And so they wanted us to acquiesce, right? Because they didn't want to ruffle the feathers of the farmers. And usually that's the case with politics because the farmers have power. That's who's sending food. So for him to go directly for farmers, outright blatantly for farmers, that goes to show you he's not rational.
And again, Alabama is a ruby red state. And this guy supported Trump. But again, I think the rationale was we, red-blooded white Americans are not going to suffer. It's not us. The problem isn't us. The problem is them, right? We're going to get them out of our country. We're going to build our economy. We're going to be strong again. America's going to be great again. But I think that people are living in a state of denial, right? If you go to some place like Sam's Club and you want to buy gas, they don't take cash. How can a country be great again if they won't even take their own damn currency? That tells me we're in trouble, right? You don't want the dollar? In America, you don't want the dollar?
No.
So we are in very, very serious, we're looking at economic crisis because all of these people who are being shown the door, well, that's less taxes collected, less people buying homes, cars, appliances. So that hurts the economy. How do you build the economy?
In fact,
by putting people out of work?
Real estate prices are dropping now.
They are.
They are dropping because people aren't going to buy the houses because they're going to have a job.
Right.
And it's crazy.
A mess.
It's crazy.
Yeah. A mess.
So that is going to affect your property value, right?
Mhm.
Because if the price of the home drops, there goes the value of your home along with it. So this is just more of a strain on the economy because now, you might end up upside down on your mortgage, right? Or you want to refinance. The house that was worth $400,000 last month is now worth
Which is
$300,000.
crazy.
That's what's
It's
happening.
crazy.
But that is what's happening, and this cycle is going to continue because I don't know if Trump really thinks things out. I think he just does things. I think he just wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to send a missile into Jersey.
That's what irrational people do.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm just going to blow up part of Newark and just see what the hell
Mhm.
happens.
Mhm.
Right. So you
No,
decide.
I'm just gonna blow up Newark,
Right.
and nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
Don't worry. It's just,
Right.
I bet you nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
That's his attitude.
Right. And again, you want to have peace talks, but you only invite Putin,
Mm-hmm.
right?
But this is the
So
same person that said COVID wasn't real.
it was a Democratic host. And climate change. Climate change is also another
Mhm.
Democratic host.
Mm-hmm.
So all these people that are dying in these floods, all these people that are dying in these wildfires that lost everything, the fire is a hoax. The floods in Kentucky, Georgia,
What about all
Tennessee,
these planes all of a sudden?
that's a hoax.
This is craziness, though.
I know. Just the other day
The
in Boston.
world is crazy right now.
Mm-hmm. And the drones that are
Yes.
all over the place.
Yes.
So yeah, it is an interesting time in America. I don't think we've had times like this before, but this is just a very, very different
Mm-hmm.
sort of time. I think that I was talking to my wife the other day, and I said to her, the day of judgment didn't have to happen. Didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you continue to do evil all day and all night, eventually.
Well, he said if you would turn
from
if you
your
would turn
wicked,
from your
your
wicked ways,
ways,
I'll heal the land.
right.
And they.
But if you will not turn,
Mm-hmm.
then eventually you're going to have to reap what you sow.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to reap what you sow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what is happening in America. I think that's why Donald Trump really won this election.
Mm-hmm.
I think Donald Trump is the modern day Pharaoh. Pharaoh led to the destruction of the civilization of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald Trump is going to lead to the destruction of this nation.
So so sum it up and say, what is it that you're recommending Americans to do in 2024?
2025.
2025 to
Right.
buckle up
Mhm.
and do what?
I think Americans need to save as much money as possible. I think Americans need to stock up on food and water supplies. I think Americans need to lose their fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you need, if you believe in a higher power, I think you need to turn to that higher power. And the Bible says, pray without ceasing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what people need to do because you cannot trust the government, right? You cannot trust the government, state, federal, and or local, right? I think we have to rely on one another. I think that if you have family members that you have disagreements with, I think it's time to put those disagreements aside and say, look, I need you and you need me. And the only way we're going to survive in this time is to put aside these petty differences and work together. Because if you got a piece of bread, I'm going to have a piece of meat.
I agree, Ron. I agree. And I agree with you with what you said so much that I'll share with you. My family has decided collectively that the Poconos is the safe spot.
Mm-hmm.
And we are collectively, every time we get paid, putting into the pot for food to be stored and water to be stored, because for the first time in my 57 years, I could really say I don't feel confident about our ability to provide those basic needs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all educated and employed, and I still do not feel confident that we will be able to maintain that in the future.
Absolutely, because employed today doesn't necessarily mean employed tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But Roman, it was good to have you back. You know,
Good to be back.
yeah, it's like sometimes you come back like you never missed a beat, right? So I'm
You
glad
have to forgive
come.
me though. You know I got a lot of stuff going on.
I know, and you're in New York a lot, but it's good, you know, that you could come, and it'd be good if you can come back, you know, some other Thursdays and share your wisdom with us, you know, and just let the people know that you're back, right? And you have something to say, you know, because a lot of times when we have these discussions, what we do not have is the female energy.
Oh, I don't know what you guys would do without female energy. I don't know. But no, it's good to be back, and you know, keep my mom in your prayers.
I sure will. I sure will.
That's that. And again, the can drive, you could drop off cans here. And this is being done. You said we have to start to take care of ourselves. And
We
so,
do.
of course, I have to big up the dynamic, my dynamic sorority sisters of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the New York alumni chapter, the first alumni chapter to ever be established. We are taking care of our own.
Well, that's good.
So,
And folks, just in case she didn't mention it, the station is located at 383 East Brown Street in East Stroudsburg. So if you are listening tonight and you want to drop off some canned goods and you're feeling generous, please do not hesitate to come by. We will make sure that they get to people in need.
mhm.
So with that, I'm going to say thank you for listening and have a good night.